Great. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started here in a few minutes. Just sit tight. Well, it is 1 after our scheduled time. Why don't we give folks just a little bit more time to get connected in? I can see the attendee number is going up, so if you don't mind, while we do have a full agenda for today, I think it'd be good to give folks just a couple more minutes to get connected. So. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started today? We do have some great material, and the beginning of this is going to be a little bit of a recap as to what we have planned for the next 5 sessions. So as people are getting connected in, hopefully we won't lose too many folks at the beginning here. And why don't we go ahead and start off? I've got a short video to share.
And this one is, I think, is the most accurate. How many network security engineers? Now, these are the nerdiest people. They get the highest paid people out there. They get paid millions of dollars to make secure systems, right? So how many network security engineers to change a light bulb? Well, first, you have to enter a password and your username. And then you have to answer your 3 questions. And then you have to type these letters in before we can tell the answer. And then how many of these squares actually have a sign in them? And then you have to prove you're not a robot. And then, oh, failed. Engineers were that funny. Engineers can be funny. They can be funny.
Yeah, I thought we'd start off with a little bit of humor this morning as we get into the security of things. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Yeah, great. So welcome, everyone. Hopefully you remember us from the first session. I'm Matt, and also on screen here is Mike. We'll be facilitating things for the next 5 sessions going forward here. So looking forward to going through the SRA with everyone. Just as a recap, if you can go to the next slide. We have 6 sessions. The first session we kicked off last month, and we encouraged to have executive support for that first one, and hopefully everyone that's on this call is getting support from your organization to be able to spend the time, carve out the time, not only to participate in this collaborative, but also to fill out the SRA and to complete that full risk assessment and to mitigate any risks that you have in your environment. First session again was last month. We have session 2, 3, and 4 that are coming up here. 2 is today, another one next month, and then a third one being the 4th session, November 30th. And then as we get into session 5, we're going to bring it all together in January, give some folks some time, all of December and a portion of January, knowing it's the holidays, to get some things together and be able to share together in January what our progress has been, and then we'll give another 6 months or 6 weeks or so there before we get to the wrap up. And the wrap up, the hope is that we'll be able to share collectively what our progress has been, that we've been able to get through. Each health center has been able to get through the full security risk assessment, the device that we're going to use here, the tool that we're going to use, and then also reaffirm with our executive leadership the need to mitigate any of those risks that might be identified in the risk assessment. So we can go to the next slide real briefly. Today is session 2, and Mike will go through that content and go through the objectives for session 2 later on in the presentation. Next slide. As we get into session 3, which will be next month, we're going to basically get through the sections 1 and 2 completely. We'll go through the general security risk assessment practices, HIPAA security regulations, key security policies, and security policy management. So that'll be in session 3. Hopefully everyone has that on their calendar. For session 4 in November, we'll be going through the sections 3 and 4 if we haven't gotten to any of that yet. Excuse me. We'll be identifying key personnel involved in the security risk assessment, security awareness training that's part of that, and EPHI access management. Yeah, I'm sorry. And then as we get into the next session is going to be session 5 is going to be wrapping it all up. Session 6 will all come together and do kind of a summary. For meeting logistics today, I think the system actually keeps everyone muted except for Mike and myself. If you have any questions that come up, and we do want to have some question and answer certainly at the end as well, please put those questions into the chat early on if you can, so that we have an idea of what the questions are. Maybe do a little prep for that. And then we are going to be recording the session, so it'll be available after for people that weren't able to attend. You'll be able to go back and also revisit these slides and revisit the stuff that we're talking about. So again, thanks for participating, and I will hand off now to Mike, who will go through the rest of the material.
So good afternoon, everybody, and good morning for some of us, actually. So today's objectives, the whole goal for today is to give you a better understanding of the SRA tool, why we're using it, and what's so great about it. By the end of this session, you should have downloaded the SRA tool if you have in front of your computer. You should understand the logistics of it, how to use it, navigating back and forth, understand a little bit better of the different sections, and we'll get started with the first section of the SRA tool. So Matt kind of broke down to you some of the sections, so I'm not going to go too in depth to them, but there's 7 sections to this SRA. The first one is Security Risk Assessment Basics, which is just a high-level overview of your security management processes. Section 2 covers your security policies, your procedures, your documentations. Here you'll find if you're missing any policies and procedures, or if you need to improve on your policies and procedures and where your weak points are. Security in your workforce talks about access management, and security awareness training, which is security awareness training has become a very big focus when it comes to HIPAA guidelines because of all the threats we see nowadays in the healthcare sector. So they want everybody to be aware of, not just the IT folks, but just your staff in general, to be aware of all threats that are out there and how to identify them so that they can properly report them to the IT department. Security in your data, this is where it'll get a little more technical, but it's fine, it's nothing crazy, and we're here to explain everything so that everybody can get a good understanding and be able to understand all the terminology. Section 5, security in your practice, physical safeguards, will cover everything from if you have a badge system on your door to get into your building, to where is your EPHI on that server, is it in a protected room, and different plans you can put in place to make sure it's in a protected area. Section 6, security in your vendors. Here we'll cover BAAs. If you're not familiar with BAAs, we're going to break them down. and explain to you if you need one, if you have one, where you should store them, or how you should manage them. And vendor access, how to secure your PHI from vendors that do have access to it, and how to keep a good lock on it as far as HIPAA guidelines. Section 7 is contingency planning, which is going to cover your disaster recovery and your backup plans, which is a very big section in its own and a very important section. So we'll go very in depth on that section. Next slide, please. So why the SRA tool? The biggest and best reason for the SRA tool is free. That's what everybody loves. It's free. We don't have to pay for it. We can get it right off of a website and begin using it. There's many SRA tools out there. If you just Google security risk assessment tool, you're going to find an abundance of tools. Now, these tools can range in prices from very high to medium, but overall they can get pretty pricey, because when you do research them, you're going to find out that they're going to charge you per provider, or depending how many centers you have, or depending how many patient records you manage. It varies, but it can get very pricey for something that in the end is going to accomplish the same goal as this SRA tool. By all means, if you want something that's going to look a little nicer, maybe present some fancier reports, by all means try it out. But at the end of the day, it's going to accomplish the same goal, and this tool is very robust. You'll be able to do anything inside of this tool and implement a really good security risk assessment with just this tool alone. So the SRA tool also offers great reports as well. You can do quarterly, annual, you could do them daily, as often as you like. We suggest kind of a tip is we suggest updating and generating your reports every time you make a major change in your organization or in your network, so that your SRA is always up to date. If you always wait for an annual or a quarterly, you may have made changes months ago, forgot about them, and you're not properly updating them or reporting them. So reporting is a big tool here, something you should use often to just keep track of where you are at in your SRA process. So another feature here is this is commonly used by the HHS or OCR. It's very audit friendly because they use this tool. If you ever have to present this to auditors, it's that much easier for them to find the information they're looking for or they need from this tool, because they're very familiar with it. You might use another tool, generate a report from the other tool, and give it to them. Then they can't find the information that they're looking for. They'll go back and forth with you. It's going to make you do more digging, and it's just not going to be as efficient. So that's the beauty of this tool, is that it's very commonly used and everybody's familiar with it. So it's more universal and easier to use for everyone. This has improved functionality and updates for those of you that are familiar with SRA 2.0, which essentially was a very fancy Excel sheet at the end of the day. It was hard to use. If you made mistakes inside the Excel sheet and you went back and tried to change them, you had to change it in multiple places. It could be a bit of a headache sometimes. And at that time, a lot of people were looking for third-party tools, software, because it was just so much easier to use in an Excel sheet to maintain an SRA, which is such a large process and a very drawn out, in-depth process. So this offers constant updates. As actually right before this session, about a week ago, they put out SRA 3.2, which improved the reporting. This was based off 3.1, but now 3.2 came out and it improved reporting. So they are pushing out updates. So that's why we love this tool now. We use it in-house. We recommend it to everybody. It's just a good overall tool to use now. Next slide, please. So some features, just so you can get an understanding of what's inside of this tool. It has enhanced user interface, which contains logic-based workflow, which is really logic-based questioning. So as you go using this tool, you're going to realize that if you try to skip ahead to different questions inside of section, it's not going to let you. In the beginning, you're going to find that a little frustrating, because you're going to think, oh, I already, I want to move ahead and see what's next. But you won't be able to, because logic-based questioning, the way it works is, let's say it asks you, where do you store your PHI? Is it A, cloud-based, B, local server, or C, I don't know? Depending on your answer there, your next question is going to be different. So you can't just skip ahead, because all this is why it gets so in depth. So depending if you answer cloud-based, it's going to branch you out into a whole different set of questions. So you have to go in sort of an order, which is that logic-based questioning. It has a progress tracker. You can just continuously save your SRA and not need to worry about completing the whole thing before moving, and you can just keep going back and tracking your progress where you were at. It has a threat and vulnerability management, so you can understand where your vulnerabilities lie. So actually, for example, the example we just used of your PHI, if you were to answer that your PHI is, you don't know where it's stored, you would more than likely get that rated as a critical vulnerability when you generate a report. So that's the beauty of this, that at the end, once you generate that report based off the way you answer your questions, it'll tell you, it'll rank those questions on a vulnerability. If you don't know where your PHI is, chances are it's going to put that as critical, and that's something that at the end, when you have a report, you know, okay, I need to work on my critical vulnerability before I work on any of these other medium or low or high vulnerabilities. So that's as far as threat and vulnerability management covers. It also tracks the progress of you resolving your vulnerabilities. So if you fix these vulnerabilities and you regenerate the report, you'll see your progress on how you were doing beforehand. So if you do give this report out to, say, a board or auditors, they'll see that in the previous years you had these vulnerabilities and now you have resolved them, which is a very big part of HIPAA. HIPAA's not a cut and dry or black and white type thing. It's very general. As long as you're typically showing progress in your environment, resolving these vulnerabilities that you have, it's acceptable. So it's a big thing to be able to show the progress on your vulnerabilities. So again, detailed reporting. You can do reporting as often as you like. You can do annual, quarterly, or daily if you like. You can now report based off specific sections. Previously, you had to only report off your entire report. So if you wanted to make changes, you would generate the entire report for your entire SRA and then look at certain sections. Now you can work on one specific section at a time if you'd like and generate a report so you can really perfect that one section, which is a great feature that they've added on here. Asset tracking and BAA, there's a whole area in here which we're going to cover that will allow you to keep track of all your assets. You can list out from, if you use some sort of third-party tool for tracking your assets, let's say computers or servers or something along those lines, you can generate that report and attach it into your SRA, or even just servers that contain your PHI only. If you want to just put that in there, that's phenomenal. You have a whole section where you can attach it to your SRA, which the more information you have in the SRA, the better. That's the key here. Put as much information as you can in this SRA so you can really get an understanding of your security risk for your organization, and it's just better for reporting purposes as well. It also has a section for your BAAs, your business associate agreements. If you're not familiar with what a BAA is, it's essentially a agreement you have with, let's say, a vendor or someone who has access to your PHI, a third party that has access to your PHI, like a vendor or a cloud-based company, or even a shredding company. Shredding companies can technically have access to your PHI if they were to look at the paper that you shredded and it has PHI on there. So you want to make sure you have these agreements in place with these vendors that they're going to handle PHI in a proper and an accordingly way. So next section. So here's a pop quiz just to reiterate and understand some of the things we've learned so far. What are some benefits of the SRA tool? I'll give you all about a minute to answer. Once most of you have answered, we will move on and review the question. All right, so the majority of you have voted. Let's review the answers. So The poll results. What are some benefits of the SRA tool? Automatic SRA alleviating you from having to do it yourself? Absolutely not. This is a tool to assist you, but you're still going to have to do it yourself. Automated reporting, asset tracking, and vulnerability reporting. The majority of you answered this, and that is the answer right there. These are just some of the features that we just spoke about. It has reporting, it has asset tracking, and it reports on your vulnerabilities. Now, the third option automatically scans THC for viruses, malware, and vulnerabilities. Unfortunately, I wish it did, it doesn't, but if you have third-party software that does this for you, if you run an annual vulnerability assessment in your organization, you would take that report and that information and attach it to your SRA. So it doesn't do it for you, but you definitely should include that information into your SRAs. Automatically detects if EPHI leaks from your network. It doesn't automatically detect it. That can be kind of tricky, but this will at least help you understand if you do have EPHI potentially leaking from your network somewhere based off the way you answer your questions. So great job on that poll. Next slide, please. All right, so let's take a moment to download the SRA tool. The link is not going to be clickable, but if you go to healthit.gov, there's a search option at the top right, and you can type in security risk assessment tool like you see there on the right hand side. It'll appear for you. You can also go to Google and type in Health IT security risk assessment tool. I know it's going to be the first one that pops up, and it'll take you to the screen you see there on your right hand side, the Health IT Gov website. Click that download version 3.2 of the SRA tool, which is the new version now. I'll give you guys just 1 minute to get that going.
And we also did include the link to the tool in the chat as well for everybody.
Oh, perfect. Even better. So there's the link in the chat. You can just click it. It'll take you directly there. I'll let you download it. It's 94 megs, depending on how fast your internet is. It'll probably download in seconds. But if not, we'll just continue it. It'll get going for you. So I'll give you about another 30 seconds. All right, so hopefully you at least got it started so that you can have that tool there with you. So familiarize yourself with the tool. The healthit.gov website actually has a ton of information that's very useful. It's almost one of the best educational areas that you can go into, just find information regarding the tool, regarding how to perform SRAs. It covers all the different sections. There's a lot of useful information. Familiarize yourself with that website and the tool and all the sections. Like we mentioned before, and we'll continue mentioning it, the security risk assessment process is a very in-depth process. You're essentially doing a security risk assessment from top down of your organization. So you're going to cover many areas of your organization. That's going to take some time. This is not a 3-hour task. This takes a good amount of time to build. But the best thing is once you have done it that first time, every other time you go to update it, you'll just update small different sections. So the big goal is to just really do a good job on the first time running this, so that you don't have to go back in the future and fix so many things, only the things that change, which will make your lives easier and reporting easier. So familiarize yourself with the tool. If you used the legacy version, the SRA 2.0, unfortunately, I know some of you do use it in here, that's why I want to mention it. Unfortunately, you cannot upload your results into the new SRA tool 3.0, the software version. You'll have to manually enter some of the information, but because you already have it, and this is a question-based questionnaire, and you can attach different things into the tool, it's fairly quickly. We transitioned from it ourselves. We had a legacy version at 1.2, and we updated it. It'll take you a minimal time. It's not too tough to do. So we encourage you to please upgrade and move on to the SRA tool 3.0. So if you have it downloaded, open it up so you can follow along. It'll be easier for you to understand. If not, watch this screen and watch the screenshots we're going to provide you. This is exactly what you're going to see. So as far as navigation, and we want to break down navigation because, like I said, it's logic-based questioning. So you might be confused why you can't skip ahead or you can't go back into certain sections. So you're going to primarily rely on the next and back buttons as your means for navigation. You can use the assessment button on the left-hand side right there under home, practice info, and then assessment. You can use that to jump to the different sections, but again, you can't skip questions because it's a logic-based flow. So use that assessment section to jump to different sections if you'd like, but you're going to primarily use next and back buttons as you fill out this questionnaire. So next slide, please. So once you're right at the main section where you're going to begin your SRA, you're going to want to hit either continue SRA if you already have one. I know some of you have actually used this tool already and just looking for a little more information and learn new things about it. But if you do have it, you just hit continue SRA, and it's going to ask you to open your ongoing SRA file, and you'll just use that file so you can just continue from where you left off. If not, you're going to select new SRA, and it's going to ask you to enter your name, your location, where you want to save the file. So again, you cannot upload your results from SRA 2.0 like we mentioned to the SRA 3.x, so you're just recommended to start a new one if you haven't done so. Next slide, please. So we recommend to use your full name or something that identifies you specifically. Multiple people can work off of this SRA. So you definitely do not want to share one name for everybody that's using the SRA tool, because there's an audit log in here. You want to know who's making the changes to what sections. You know, SRA tool, if you were ever audited, you would have to provide this report. So you really want to have a proper audit log, proper reporting, and make sure everything is as perfect as it possibly can be. So just use full name or whatever you can to just identify yourself and whoever else is editing this SRA. The SRA file is a .sra file. It's only decryptable by this tool. You can't really upload it anywhere else to use it. You got to use it specifically with this tool. So we recommend when you do store this SRA file, you encrypt it yourself. If you use something like BitLocker or VeraCrypt, something to encrypt this file, because keep in mind, you want to keep this in a secure location, as this is going to contain all the information of your organization, all the security risks that your organization may contain. If a hacker or somebody malicious were to get a hold of this file, that can be very dangerous for your organization. They'll be able to find, you know, all your vulnerabilities that you have and then take advantage of it. So we definitely recommend taking this file, storing it into a cloud storage that your company owns, encrypting it there. Also having a backup of it on your local server storage if you have, and encrypting it there as well. Just don't, you know, download it and put it on some USB stick and leave it lying around. You know, you don't want to do that. Make sure you have it in multiple places where it's backed up and secured, because you also don't want to lose this file. Then you'd have to start over. So it's all run off of a file. Next slide, please. So the SRA file operates off the .sra as we mentioned before, and we recommend keeping it in a secure location where multiple people can access. If you're going to access it with multiple people, put it in a shared drive that you have, and just make sure it's encrypted and everybody has either the decryption key or the password to access this file. So when you select that option right there where it says pick a spot to save your file, it's going to ask you where to save it. If you have access to your cloud-based storage locally, then save it from there. If not, store it locally in a secure place, and then also store it in your cloud-based storage. So when you continue to edit your file and you're prompted to select, once you store it and you're accessing your file, it's going to prompt you who wants to use this file, and you're going to have to enter in the correct person using that name. So if it's John Doe, you enter John Doe. If it's John something else, you enter that name, and it'll take you to the right section so that you're using the right audit file that's associated with it. Next slide, please. So another pop quiz. Where should you store your SRA file? And this one's can be a little trickier, but we'll give you another minute so you can answer it, and then we'll move from there. All right. Looks like majority of you have already voted. So where should you store your SRA file? Unencrypted USB drive taped under your desk. 4% of you need to reevaluate your security posture in your organization. You do not want to put an unencrypted USB drive taped under your desk. An encrypted USB drive taped under your desk, although that could be used, it's at risk for being lost or broken, and then you won't be able to access it, but at least you have it encrypted and nobody can take it. Encrypted USB drive taped under your desk, and CHC's cloud storage. Now this one's kind of tricky because technically you'll have a backup of it in your cloud storage. You also have an encrypted version of it taped under your desk, but we strongly recommend do not tape it under your desk. Put it in a local server somewhere. And the last one, your CHC's local encrypted server and your CHC's cloud server storage. That is definitely the answer. You want to keep it somewhere locally encrypted. If you have a local server, even better. And if you have a cloud storage that's encrypted with backups, even better. So that's definitely the answer. Next slide, please. So let's finish this off with the first step. This is going to be your first step of the whole SRA. Once you create your SRA file, once you've already downloaded it and set up the names and picked your storage locations, this is the first section you're going to be taken to. You're going to be taken to your practice information. So here, just enter in your practice information, as much information as you have, enter it in there. And if you have multiple locations, once you enter in that first set of addresses, you'll be able to scroll down and there's a plus sign to add every single location you have. Again, we encourage you to add as much information as possible. So if you have multiple practices, take advantage and just add each one after another. You can use this one SRA file for your entire organization. You don't have to make a different one for every single location, but it's just good to enter all your information in here as you can. And on the left-hand side, you can see it says under practice info, assets, vendors, and documents. We're not going to touch too much base on there, but that's the section you're going to go back to once we get to the later sections in the later series of the webinar, where we're going to cover BAAs and your asset management. Under assets, that's where you'll have in an area to add all your assets. Under vendors, that's where you'll have your areas to add your BAAs. And under documents, that'll be miscellaneous documents. So like I mentioned before, if you do virus or malware scans in your organization, or you do annual vulnerability assessments in your organization, you can take those reports and upload theirs to documents. So any kind of information you have that you know is written on a file, just put it all in the document section, and that'll cover the majority of the questions that are going to be asked in the future. So we wanted to keep this one short just to get everybody to download the file and be able to get the first step done. And then on our next session, we're going to go into depth on the assessment sections 1 and 2, and we'll move from there. So I will let Matt close it out for everyone.
Yeah, so really just to reiterate, what we're hoping is that between now and the next session, everyone will have the chance to go out there and do these first steps and to get all the way through the first section. So why don't we go to the next slide? Yeah, and then in session 3, Mike, you want to talk a little bit more detail about what we'll cover next time?
Sure. So in session 3, we're gonna dive into the assessment sections 1 and 2, which on that left-hand side of that screenshot I showed you, you saw assessment. We're gonna click that assessment and go to 1. We're gonna complete the entirety of sections 1 and then 2, which here is we're gonna cover just general security risk assessment practices. They're gonna ask you all the high-level questions of your organization. We're gonna cover some of the HIPAA security regulation type questions. We're going to get into security policies, which that's a big one. We're going to go very in depth on that. There, you'll be able to identify security policies that you may be missing, security policies that you may need to improve on, or as far even management of your security policies. If you have any that are just hanging around in different folders, you want to keep them all in one spot, and we'll try to upload them into your actual SRA there, so you can have one good spot where all your security policies are.
Great. Then here on the last slide, there was one question out there, Michael. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at that. My guess is that it's one of the HCN users that had this question. But can you take a look at that about downloading within Citrix?
Sure. Let me see.
So I guess the
Stephanie, are you
question,
able to?
I'll just read it out. Yeah, it says it won't allow us to download within Citrix. Is there any way to do that?
I could look into that for you. I would recommend though, if you are going to download the tool, you should definitely keep this on your own local storage. Yeah, you should definitely keep this on your own local storage. So I would say download the tool locally. I don't know if Citrix is going to allow you to, but if there's specific reasons why you need it inside of Citrix, you can message us on the side and then we can work something out and get it downloaded for you. But definitely, even if you do get it in Citrix, make sure you get that copy for yourself and keep it in your own personal encrypted storage.
And there is an installer as well, right? So it'll download and then it'll install the actual application, which will then point to that file that you want to keep a copy of. So if you don't have the rights to install an application locally on the machine that you're downloading to, then that'll be another hurdle that you need to get past.
Right, and inside Citrix, you're not going to be able to install it. So yeah, you're going to want to focus on installing it locally on your machines, your local machine.
Right, and then another question: how do you add other users to be able to document on it?
So when you're creating in the first section, when you're creating users, I believe there's a plus sign somewhere by the first for the usernames to add additional users. Or even once you reopen up your SRA file again, I believe there's also a section right on the home page to add your user. If you don't find it, you can send us a message and I can guide you through it.
And Mike, I don't think that there's necessarily any security on the file, right? So if you have access to where that file is and you can get to it, you open it up, and then that's when you have to identify who you are that's adding to the file. Is that right?
Right, exactly that way.
So the person who sets it up in the first place doesn't necessarily have to create you as another user. I think when you connect in, you might even be able to just put in your name as being the person adding info.
Yes, I believe they have the access to create it, but if not, once they share the file and they try to create it, they can create their own user account based off that file. Cool. We still have some time, so if anybody has questions here, feel free to ask.
So there was a comment that was sent in, and they're saying that they were very thankful for you guys going over this tool, and that it's really helpful to have everything in one file. So thank you for sharing that. And then we do have some other questions that came in. So the first question that just came in is, does it matter if this tool is installed on a server or a workstation?
No, it does not matter where you install the actual tool itself. The tool itself is just an exe file, so just like any other software. What you want to focus on is make sure when you save your results from the tool, that file, that .sra file, is where you want to store it somewhere safe. The tool itself, you can install it wherever you want. Doesn't matter. It is only Windows based, unfortunately, right now for the Mac users out there. So it will have to be a Windows machine. But just store the file that you save in a secure location.
Great. And then the second question that we got was, what is the best iCloud or server to back up?
Well, the best one would be if you have a company one. If you have a Microsoft-based one, that would be the best area. If not, almost all of iCloud, Google Cloud, OneDrive all have encryption features, or you can encrypt the file yourself and place it in there. But they all have their own security features. Where we strongly use Microsoft, so OneDrive, since it's usually considered an organizational type tool, we'll use Microsoft OneDrive. So if you have OneDrive, I just use OneDrive. If not, they all work. They all have the different security features.
Great, thank you. And we just got another additional question. So they would like to know, can multiple people use the SRA tool at the same time? So can more than one person work on it at the same time?
So think of it like a Microsoft Word file. It's essentially a file like none other. It doesn't have live editing where, you know, I guess sometimes if you use Word in the cloud, you can see who's editing the file at the same time. But unfortunately, you can't. You would have to edit the file, save it, and then the next person would have to edit it. If not, you may have, you know, it may give you some conflicting information or give you some sort of errors. Any additional questions?
That might be worth testing, Michael. I don't know that I've ever tried to open it, you know, the same file at the same time with someone else. So it'd be
I know I
interesting.
tried it on SRA. I tried it SRA 3.0 and it wouldn't work. We did test that in house before in SRA 3.0. Unless one of the other updates came out, 3.1 or 3.2, maybe made changes. I mean, that would be great if it is. But I know as far as, you know, the original one, it fortunately wasn't letting us do it. Any other questions, Stephanie?
No, I do not see any other questions in the chat.
Okay. Well, if you guys need anything, our emails are here. If you have questions, we're here throughout this whole entire webinar series. You can reach out to Matt or myself, and we can help you with anything within the tool, any questions you may have as far as security risk assessments. And we also encourage everybody to not just participate during this webinar session, but after this, go and learn about your security risk assessments. Understand the full process of it. There's an abundance of information on Google. It's a very in-depth process. So go reading through all the different sections. It's great knowledge for you and your organization to really implement a proper security risk assessment program in your CHCs. So we encourage you to go and learn about it. And we're here to help you out with anything you need. Anything else from you, Matt?
Nope. Thanks again, everyone, for participating. And again, another reminder, we have session 3 will be coming up next month. Hopefully you already have a placeholder on your calendar for that and for the other ones all the way out to session 6. And then you'll be receiving, as you did for this one, more information on the GoToMeeting as we get closer to that next session.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.